Welcome back. So, Dr. Adi, were...
Yes, I was talking about the dynamics of the informal system. So I asked the question whether it has a life of its own. And then my thought is that the informal system doesn't drive itself. It's still driven by what happens at the government or the public sector and the private sector levels. Now, if you travel around Nigeria, say to any state in the north, or even in the southeast or southwest, you will realize that economic activities will come to a life. Immediately salaries are paid. By the middle of the month, towards the end of the month, once that dissipates, it dies.
You say it doesn't even get to middle of the month?
I don't know. So,
first week.
And that is what, for instance, the minimum wage advocates look at, and they think they need more money. But that is not the solution. Because the problem is not the paucity of funds, but it points to some institutional failure. Look at the market, look at the government system. So those are the things that we need to put in perspective. Okay. The informal system doesn't seem to have a life of its own.
Mr. Chizia, well, you were the one that initiated the informal thing, which you responded to. But talk about the informal sector. Yes. A lot of them play in the agricultural sector. Yes. A lot of the informal activity goes in the agricultural sector. And the government continues to talk about this government has diversified the economy. We're having less importation of rice, which is a staple. So they say we're having less importation of rice. The government diversified into agriculture, more farmers are rising up in the rural areas and all of that. Is there a way, I mean, seeing that the oil prices are wobbly, sort of, and we shouldn't even be looking at that. Is there a way we can look at this other side to push our 2019, our economy in 2019 to where we want it to get?
Well, I think that the first thing I want to say is that the informal sector, it's informal to the extent that it's not dependent to what obtains in the larger economy, to a large extent. Now, there are people, farmers in rural areas in this country, they don't know about foreign exchange. I'm telling you. There are places you have where farmers are self-dependent in the sense that they're self-sustaining. The guy produces his yams from his farm, and then he goes to the market, he sells it, and then exchanges it for what he doesn't have. There are people like that. And so when you say, does it have a life of its own? In fact, it has an autonomous life in the sense that they're not concerned, they don't know about. And that's why we're talking about elections. And people are all this jazz, all these stories we're talking about. The larger population out there, they're still going to be driven by, primordial considerations. They're going to be driven by, although to some extent, we must say, this election are lucky in the sense that the division between at least the two people in the forefront, the division is not as what it could have been in the past. What I'm saying in the fact is that the fact that they are Muslims, they are Northerners. We're talking about Matiku and the president. And so maybe that would take away, part of.
But there are other parties there are other candidates.
But when you talk of the populations, of course, how many, the elites, how many, in fact, get off their seats and then, maybe now, but again, awareness is being created. They expect people to go and queue and then try and vote and so on. And that's why we're talking about improving the electoral system so that you can have online voting. You want to capture votes, it's tedious. It's hard work. You have to vote. You have to go, and in the past, you go first of all. You are going to be what's the word? Accredited first of all, and sometimes you have to go and then come back, and then you vote and so on. And lots of elites just couldn't be bothered. And more so when you have a system that you say to yourself, so I'm going to vote. To what extent is my vote going to count? And so psychologically, you are defeated. So now, having said that, there are things we've not addressed. We've not talked about the environment. We've not talked about budget. Now, let me talk about budget. One of the things that some discussions I've said to some people that the budget that has just been presented is an abuku in the sense that it's born to die. And there's some contentious. I say that because even if we go to the next level, that means APC stays on. That budget, that must be a supplementary budget. Now, you are talking about minimum wage, that has not been budgeted for. And that's why the president himself is trying to, if you listen to the discussion that is now going on, Now the talk is, how are we going to fund this? So we talk about 30,000 naira. Some people say it's not adequate and so on. Yes, okay, it's not adequate. But we are going from 18 to 30. And you have a situation where 24 states or so in the Federation have relied on bailouts to even pay the 18. And so you can see that you can multiply the challenges. Now you have a budget. We just get the budget. So I said to myself, it's like discourageous. Because, you're given a budget, and the budget is going to be, was presented towards the end of December. We had the issue of shame, people booing the president as he presented the budget. It's never happened before. It's unprecedented. No matter what you thought of the president, you have to respect his office. And like the president just said during the presentation, we've been watching internationally. And it's like watching your detailing in the public. People are looking at us, and the fallout is beginning to manifest. And some of those who are very vociferous and not beginning to get the pains. I'm sorry to be saying that. Yes.
Yes, but some people have said that it is time for the state to wake up and smell the coffee. Yeah. That the days of going to Abuja to share money are gradually coming to an end. Yes. What are they doing about it?
Yeah, but Alero, that's why people have been talking about restructuring this economy. And one of the things, and we are playing games with it. We're playing games with it in the sense that people are used to, where the gravy is, and you're saying to yourself, it's not under my care, and I'm going to lose this thing. So I have all this power to allocate and appoint and so on, and I'm looking at the thing, and nobody puts the interest of this country in the forefront, in the front burner. We must restructure this economy. It's not going to work. And what's happening is that we are subsidizing inefficiencies, we're encouraging people who are lazy and so on. Everybody's dependent on the resources from the Niger Delta. And we must come to terms to the fact that the economy of this country, we cannot progress the way it is today. Because there's no way. You have states that are not viable. You cannot overnight turn them to become viable. There's no magic wand. We had a situation in this country before just after independence, we had regions, we operated something that was close to a federal economy the way it should be. Regions earned their resources, and they pay tax to the center, for the center, to maintain certain common services, security, external relations, and so on and so forth. Now, suddenly this was changed. And so you get this money, you earn it from the region, you earn it from Niger Delta, you earn it from wherever it is, you bring it to the center, and the fight is about how do we share this money? And nobody is talking about how do you pay this money. And so you kill that motivation, that incentive for any part to be productive.
Okay. Mr. Ewe, 36 states, economic projection that doesn't look like it's going to be met. Dependence on oil, diversification of the economy, bringing in agriculture, but yet we have a lot of resources in the different states that can be used to move this economy forward. There are countries that are dependent on diamond. There are countries that are dependent on precious stones. There are countries that are dependent on mineral resources besides oil, lithium, and all of that. Can the states get up and begin to do anything? What would it take?
Well, before we get started, I'd like to discuss the issue of, quickly, what the informal sector and formal sector means. The formal sector are those things that are run by ministries, departments, and agencies. And that also includes the private sector, banks and stuff. Anything that is outside of that is the informal sector. What we're saying basically is that when you buy clothes in a carrying market, how come you pay back as at when due? When you borrow money for a car from the taxi association, how come you pay back as at when due? What we're saying basically is that foreclosure and effectiveness and compliance in the informal sector is superior to what we have in the formal sector. I just want to discuss that before we go forward. So you know what it means to say formal and informal.
To a large extent, the formal sector can actually borrow a leaf from them.
The informal sector is running the economy. That's the truth. Because ultimately, it's not the large sums of money you're looking at that matters. It's how it affects the little individual. If you have a crisis, for example, and your daughter wants to have a wedding and you want to see the yaloja, so-and-so, give me so-and-so, they give you the money and clothes, and you pay back at the right time. There are no failures in payments in those systems. They're effective. That's what we're saying. So they have better institutional, they don't have a written institutional framework. They're more effective. Now, talking about the states, the way the law is